Tonight could have been a Florida face-off between the state's two biggest Republicans, former President Donald Trump and current Governor Ron DeSantis. But for the third time, Trump is skipping a GOP primary debate. So DeSantis will share the main debate stage with Nikki Haley, Chris Christie, Senator Tim Scott, and Vivek Ramaswamy. All five likely to have to weigh in on some of the red flags that emerged after the GOP didn't meet expectations during last night's elections. Let's discuss with former Republican Congressman Charlie Dent and former Special Assistant to President Biden, Michael LaRosa. Gentlemen, thanks so much for being with us. Charlie, first to you. Top Senate Republicans have described last night as a complete failure. Is that a fair assessment?
Yeah, Republicans got wiped out just about everywhere, and I don't know what part of the abortion issue Republicans haven't figured out yet. The American public doesn't want bans. And I say this as the last member of the House Republican Conference to vote against defunding Planned Parenthood and voting against the 20-week abortion ban. I've told these members for years they're on the wrong side of public opinion. Post-Dobbs, they're finding out there are real consequences. Just look what happened in Ohio last night. By what, 13 points? Issue 1 passed, not even close. Glenn Youngkin tried to he tried to make this an issue by supporting a 15-week abortion ban. People didn't want to talk about abortion bans. That's what they did, and they got wiped out in Virginia.
Notably, he didn't want to call it a ban. He tried to sort of reframe it by calling it a 15-week limit, believing that Republicans could go on the offensive on this issue and win. He seemed to have been proven wrong.
Yeah, I'm not sure why they think that they will be the exception to sort of the rule that we've seen the trends that we've seen going forward, or I'm sorry, in the past with Montana, Kentucky, Kansas. Yeah. So that's sort of like my question is how are they thinking politically about this in Ohio or Virginia? Why do they think this is necessarily a good move? I was telling Casey Hunt here on this network on Monday that really the voting behavior and voting patterns, especially over the last 3 cycles, are really more indicative of outcomes than sort of polling. And I think that is exactly what happened in Ohio and Virginia, and I don't understand what the Republicans were expecting.
Based on my own polling when I was a member, about a third of Republicans support legal abortion under at least most circumstances.
Sure.
It's about a third. So when you're dealing with Democrats who are solidly pro-choice and a lot of independents in the same boat, Republicans are just in a very small minority, and particularly as some states pass these 6-week bans with little or no exceptions, I don't think they realize how out of step they are. And this may be a bigger issue than Donald Trump for them in the next election.
It sort of reminds me a little bit of Obamacare back in 2012. It's really hard to take away a right or a benefit. People usually don't like their rights taken away.
The rhetoric may perform well among the base, but when it comes to a general electorate, in the case of Obamacare,
they now have
really
to face the political consequences for decades of advocacy.
So, Michael, I want to ask you about the push and pull between the Democratic template and how successful it was last night, in contrast to the polling we've seen for President Biden. His polling numbers have been relatively lackluster, but some have argued that folks like us perhaps underestimate him. Do you think
I haven't heard that before.
Do you think it's sort of an underestimation of President Biden, or is it that he's potentially holding the party back from bigger success?
Well, it took the Supreme Court for Democratic voters to really get motivated. And again, not by polling. We've seen it in special elections all over the place. We've seen it, we saw it in the midterms, right? So abortion, we know, is a critical motivating tool. Kentucky, now Governor Beshear has been an incredible governor. He's been through hell, basically, in his first term with tornadoes, flooding, school shootings. He's been an excellent source of comfort for that state. He's also like running against a Casey in Pennsylvania, right? He's a household name. His father was elected twice. He was elected prior to Joe Biden. I'm not sure how much Joe Biden had to do with Governor Beshear's victory, but I do know that what Governor Beshear did is a template for Democrats, and that is to focus on emotional issues, like a very gutsy, well-produced TV ad that he led with, which was controversial, especially in his state. But he was gutsy, he took a chance, he took a risk, and it was smart.
Charlie, I want to zero in on the numbers with you because in the 2020 cycle, former President Trump led Joe Biden in 0 head-to-head polls in that cycle. So far this cycle, he's led in 14 polls thus far. Tying it back to tonight's Republican debate, doesn't that make it harder for those other Republicans on that stage to make the case that they're the candidate to beat Joe Biden?
Yeah, it does. But I think the number I'd be focusing on if I were those Republican candidates is that 2/3 of the American public don't want Joe Biden or Donald Trump. They think one is too old, Biden, and one is too crazy, Trump. And based on the recent polling, crazy was beating old, but this is a year out. So I don't like to ascribe too much to these polls a year out. But these candidates running against Trump have to tear the bark off of him, explain why he is unfit. They have not done that other than Chris Christie. They've always been running for second place or running for a spot in the Trump White House as a vice president or some other position, but they don't seem like they're serious about winning. And they have to make the argument that Trump has brought nothing but defeat the Republican Party since he was elected in 2016, that he has made losing great again. And these are the things that I think Republicans need to focus on. I've run many times, if I was always out in front, they're always attacking me. Well, that's what they should do. And that's what they need to do to Trump. They need to tear him down.
Michael?
And Democrats are desperately looking for inspiration from the president to do the same. They're looking for him to tear the bark off of Donald Trump and the Republicans, the people like Jim Comer and the other guy in Judiciary, Jim Jordan, who are constantly going after him, attacking his family, attacking his reputation. And the key number that I always like to look at is not so much the head-to-heads, but the personal favorabilities and unfavorables. It's very hard to pull the lever or vote for somebody who you just don't like personally. And that was the case if you look at the Senate seats in Pennsylvania, Arizona, Nevada, Georgia. It didn't matter how close the race was head-to-head. Democratic candidates consistently outpolled the Republicans and Joe Biden on favorability. Now, according to your poll, that is where the president needs to do some work and needs to improve on his image and his reputation that has been severely dented. And I think they need to start. I think I echo a lot of people, cable news personalities and Democrats who would like to see him start throwing a punch and
More aggressive approach.
a more aggressive approach. I mean, it did not. The swift boating of John Kerry is something that should not be forgotten, or the emails of Hillary Clinton or Michael Dukakis. Like, you have to respond in a 21st century media environment. You have to.
Michael LaRosa, Charlie Dent, we got to leave the conversation there. Two fellas with very high favorability ratings on CNN News Central. Thanks so much for being with us.
Thanks.
Appreciate it.
Thanks, Bob.